before this video starts, I got 3 quick things I want to talk to you about. It'll be quick, I swear. First off, if you're watching this when this is coming out, I'm probably going to be streaming on YouTube, The Last of Us Part 1 on PC. I know the game's broken. I know the PC port is like a mess. But that's why I kind of want to watch it. I want to stream it and see how bad it actually is. Secondly, kind of relating to that point actually, this video was supposed to come out on Sunday. Not tomorrow Sunday, past Sunday. So, if there might be some references to the PC port and me being excited for it. Just a nice little time capsule. And thirdly, I'm sorry that this video took so long to come out. There's been a lot of issues. Just me being busy, me having technical issues. But everything's gonna be good going forward. I already have some video ideas in the future. I think I already hinted at one in my previous video at the end of that. But yeah, without any further delay, it is time to finally talk about the end of this season. The end of this incredible story. One that I've been waiting since the beginning to talk about, and one I have quite a lot to say. So why don't we get started with episode 9, Look for the Light. It's currently 10:38 as of recording this. So, the episode just aired like an hour and a half ago. Holy shit! I'm gonna get into the details on this episode, reviewing it. I just wanted to record my immediate reaction after it, because oh my god. I didn't think the hospital section would be that good. I thought it was just gonna be a straight action set piece. It's high energetic music, Joel going at it. Oh my god. I can't believe it was that good. And I keep on saying I need to stop expecting this show to be, like, disappointing in any way. It's such a good it's so fucking good. I've been waiting so long to see this. It is, it's so good. It is so good. Oh my god! They even have the giraffe set piece. They adapted the ladder! The ladder! The ladder that Ellie drops! They adapted that part! They didn't have to! That's such like an only thing you can do in gameplay! That was specifically like a gameplay thing! They adapted that! They did that! And then they brought Ashley Johnson in. I knew they were gonna bring Ashley Johnson. It was so emotional. It's like one line Marlene says in the game. Like, I've known her for like birth or whatever. She says that in the game. That's such a minor thing. But they brought it back. They showed it. They showed it! I don't know how long this is gonna be. It's been like 3.5 minutes. Oh my god. Ah. Okay. Alright, I gotta get back to working on the video. 10 out of 10 episode. 10 out of 10. I can't wait to rewatch this on Wednesday with my friends. Oh my god. The last 2 episodes I struggled to write about for various reasons. This one, however, I'm struggling not to write about. My procrastination on episode 8 has gotten so bad that as of writing this, I still haven't edited that part together. And I actually started writing my thoughts on this episode before it even came out. Probably one of the only times in these reviews I've actually prepared and done something in a timely manner. And usually I watch these episodes twice before I get to writing their reviews. But for this one, I've rewatched this episode so many times over this past week, it is insane. I'm not going to wait till the end of this video to reveal it. This is my favorite episode by far. Even better than freaking Endure and Survive. I know this episode was going to be amazing, even with the short runtime, and many people worried about the pacing. And yes, I do think the transition to the hospital was a bit rushed, but that is my only issue with this episode. It is a very minor one. This episode is both completely faithful to the game in many scenes, and adds in new scenes that make this entire episode even more emotional, making me cry now 3 times. Yeah, This show has made me cry 3 times now. This season had a perfect pilot and a perfect finale, and I have so many things to say. So much that I'm actually splitting this up into 2 sections. The first section is going to be a traditional review of this episode, but in the second section, I'll be discussing Joel's decision at the end and whether he was right or wrong. Despite this being the shortest episode, I might have the most to say about it here, so let's just cut right to it. It's funny how the scenes that made me cry so far are the ones that are straight from the game, but they did have some changes to them that made them hit even harder. The scene that got me this episode, though, is entirely new, and at the very start of this episode, the very meta scene of Ashley Johnson giving birth to the character she partially created in the original Last of Us game. The 2 actors for Ellie I love so much, and I was so excited to see Ashley make her cameo in this. I love how much the show respects the original cast of the game, and lets them be involved with this series in different ways. Hell, Laura Bailey plays one of the nurses in this episode as well, which she also did in the game, but I think more people know her for a certain other character in part 2, which sadly didn't make a cameo in this episode.
Yeah, I'm 90% sure we're gonna see Abby in episode 9. If I'm wrong, I don't know, post a video of me reading that embarrassing Reagan simp Twitter thread I posted a while ago.
Shit. Ashley gives an incredible performance as Ellie's mother, Anna. I already knew I was going to love her in this, but I definitely did not expect for her to make me cry here. The moment that got me was when she was holding baby Ellie right after she was born. I think I am starting to realize that children and babies are my weakness. Who am I kidding? I always knew that. The worst part about this for me is Anna's impending death, and her not being able to be with her daughter. Seeing her smile and her telling Ellie to be angry at the dead infected was so adorable, and very fitting for Ellie and her feelings on the infected in the future. Literally, since the beginning of her life, the infected took away almost everyone she loved, and she was literally born through violence into a violent world. But in a very poetic twist, it also gave her the immunity she will use to fight back, or well, try to. I was a bit worried about the show explaining why Ellie is immune, since I did like the mystery of not truly knowing, but I think it both giving us this emotional beginning to the episode, and helping to justify why the Fireflies need to do the surgery later, is all worth it. It also helps to make an admittedly throwaway line for me in the original game have a bigger impact here. That line being when Marlene talks about knowing Ellie since she was born, and promising her mother she would protect her. I know Neil Druckmann had this backstory in mind when he was creating the game, so Marlene definitely wasn't just making up stuff to justify her actions. But the fact that we weren't able to see that backstory just makes that line feel like a lie and not honest. In the show, however, we actually get to see what she was referring to, and look, I was already crying at this point. I'm not counting this scene as also making me cry, but it definitely didn't help. Anna lying to Marlene about cutting the umbilical cord before the bite, and both of them clearly knowing that Marlene doesn't believe that lie, is a nice little parallel to the lie at the end of the episode, but also makes Anna's plea even more desperate. There is something nice about watching this scene near the end of the show, knowing that Marlene, even if it was an accident, did find someone to protect Ellie, and it's also quite poetic, again, that person is the one to kill Marlene in the end, in order to protect Ellie. And yes, the knife. I actually forgot it was from Anna, and knowing that it's hers makes the scenes of Ellie protecting it have a lot more meaning. This story also helps to explain why Ellie wants to form a connection with Marlene and Tess in particular. She probably heard about what happened to her mother and wants someone to fill that role the infected took away from her. In the end though, she didn't need a mother in them, but a father in Joel. And then the scene of Marlene having to kill Anna was heart-wrenching as well, and I need to give massive props to both Merle Dandridge and Ashley Johnson in this scene, both returning from the original game. It was so nice to see these two have a reunion in this show, and they both absolutely kill it in this scene, conveying the long friendship the two had. I love how Anna knows that Marlene won't be able to take care of Ellie herself. All she cares about is her finding someone who can. It shows just how well the two know each other. It's such an emotional scene, and makes us more sympathetic towards Marlene. I know some people think Marlene always planned on using Ellie for a cure, since taking her from Anna. And that could be true, but I genuinely believe she struggled with making the decision to sacrifice her life in the end. Even if she doesn't have as strong of a connection to Ellie as Joel, she does have one with her mother, and that is where she feels conflicted. It also makes rewatching the show more impactful as well. Obviously, we talked about the knife earlier, but this story gives the interaction Ellie and Marlene had in episode 1 more emotional weight. Explains why Ellie goes for her knife immediately, not just to defend herself,
but it is her most prized possession. Marlene then seeing that knife and being asked if she is Ellie's mom probably makes talking to her even harder than it is. Constantly being reminded of Anna not just through direct reminders, but also how Ellie acts in general. This is where I need to praise Bella Ramsey, Ashley Johnson, and whoever came up with this brilliant meta casting here. Bella Ramsey does such a good job of not just acting as Ellie, but even Ashley Johnson herself, who put a lot of herself into the character. You can easily tell in this flashback how much of a fighter Anna is, just like Ellie, and how much they share a similar personality, especially with the line,
"You fucking tell Ellie."
I think this is what truly made me cry. Seeing Anna, how much she truly loved Ellie, and how much the two of them were alike. I was looking forward to this scene so much, and it delivered greatly. Out of all the additions this series has had so far, the only thing that rivals this is Bill and Frank's new story. And even then, this one might be better just for the fact that it both enhances the adaptation of the story and the original story itself by giving us some much needed backstory. And the transition from Ellie at her most innocent to Ellie at her least was the absolute perfect way to end this flashback. Okay, that was a lot to discuss. Already this review is longer than every one of my reviews in Act 1, and almost as long as Left Behind. And how far are we into this episode again? Only 10 minutes. Yeah, I was right, this is gonna be a long one. I'm going to shorten it down a bit and not go over every single reference to past episodes here, like the beefaroni and the guitar. All I will say is that Joel making these references to past events is his attempt to try and make Ellie remember when she was happy. I absolutely loved the inverse of roles here. We started with the two not really wanting to talk to each other, like we saw in episode 2. Then Ellie is the one trying to make Joel open up in episode 4. Then the two are open to each other in episode 6. And now Ellie is the one that is closed off and Joel is the one trying to open her up. Considering everything Ellie went through, we can't really blame her for being so closed off, and I love how much Joel is worried for her. One of Joel's biggest fears for Ellie was for her to turn like him. He tried his best to make sure Ellie didn't have to kill someone, and now that she has become deeply depressed. Joel is so worried Ellie will no longer be happy, and will forever be scarred by the events she just went through. And it all comes together in the frickin' ladder moment! Okay, bit of backstory. In the game, there are many sequences where Joel needs to lift Ellie up to a higher platform in order to solve a puzzle or to get something. Like in this case, a ladder. We actually saw Joel do this move in episode 2 to Tess and to Ellie in episode 4. During this part of the game, Joel gets ready to lift Ellie to get a ladder, but unlike the many other times this has happened, Ellie doesn't come. She sits away, trapped in her mind, and not really listening to Joel, like in the show. It's one of the many great ways Naughty Dog was able to mix storytelling and gameplay. And the same goes with Ellie just dropping the ladder down and not handing it to Joel. I never thought they would adapt this into the show. I thought this was only possible to be done in the game, but they do it here. Absolutely crazy. And what makes this even funnier to me is that Joel and Ellie do this on a pallet.
Ellie, get on the pallet.
Okay, anyway, on a more serious note, this moment is actually one of the most memorable from the game, and the show does this scene almost shot for shot and word for word the same as the game. I'm of course talking about the giraffe scene. Back in episode 6, we saw Ellie's love for animals. Hell, in episode 7, we saw her love for dinosaurs in particular. And here we see her being adorable, like in those moments. More importantly though, we see Joel smiling, and being happy that the Ellie he knew before isn't completely gone. And in time, she will be able to heal. I absolutely love this sequence. And then later the callback to that undeniable view in episode 2. I love that in the game also, you can spend as much time as you like enjoying this beautiful view, especially in the remake. But just because Ellie is happy, and maybe hasn't lost all of her innocence, she still has matured through this season, and wants to finish this quest the two has had. She could have said this in any way, and maybe at the start of this series she would have put in a couple swear words, like she did when feeding the giraffe. But she is serious here, minus the bit about going to the moon of course. She talks like an adult, and it's terrible that the world has forced her to become one at such a young age, but she is. And after everything that Joel and Ellie have gone through, she finally says their equivalent of I love you to each other.
I'll follow you anywhere you go.
We'll get to Joel's I love you later in this episode, but for now, this moment of Ellie is such a bittersweet moment. I'm sure all parents have similar feelings seeing their child grow up and lose the innocence that they had when they were younger, and Joel is feeling that here. It's great though, to still see that even though Ellie is growing up and maturing, she still loves Joel and truly sees him as a father she never had. Seeing Jackson in episode 6 as well, and seeing the life the two will have after this journey is over, gives the moment an even bigger impact than the game. You know, maybe I was being too harsh on episode 6. I still really missed a picture of Sarah, and think it would have worked really well in that episode. In this episode though, it is definitely hard for me to decide which I prefer. Again, in the game, this is the moment Joel finally accepts the picture of Sarah, and is able to end his grieving. Here though, I believe the show might have changed the moment he finally stops grieving over Sarah to episode 6. The same episode Joel accepts Ellie into his life. At this point in the story at least, his grieving has been healed by Ellie. Joel's scar was something I didn't give too much thought to when it was first mentioned. I thought it was just another part of his past that is purposely kept ambiguous, like his time with Tommy trying to survive in the world. Well, now I feel like a fool, because they did decide to elaborate on how Joel got that scar, and oh boy, there's a lot to unpack. There were hints in the game that Joel did attempt to end it all, but it wasn't ever a big focus. Here though, we learn about what happened. Joel opening up to Ellie here and telling her the truth just shows how much the two have connected since they first met. And Joel saying that it was Ellie who helped to heal his grief is his way of saying that he loves her. Talking openly about Sarah to Ellie as well shows that he is finally able to move on and remember her. A contrast to when he shut down any mention of her in episode 6 during the famous argument. We see more of this during the end of the episode when Ellie and Joel go on that 5-hour hike. Man, I guess I did talk about all the references in this episode. And that includes the Pun Book!
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
This time, Joel asks for the puns to help lighten the mood after this serious conversation. But unlike in episode 4, where he's trying to hide his enjoyment of them, he isn't hiding anything from Ellie here. I'm sure this honesty will age very well by the end of this episode. And for the 100th time in these reviews, I will say it again, Bella Ramsey is so freaking adorable as Ellie, and I love them. The two bonding over these puns again right before we get to the Fireflies is so much fun. But yes, all good things must come to an end as the Fireflies ambush the two. The Pun Book helped to bond the two together and gave the two a laugh in the last moment the two are fully open to each other. Oh yeah, this is it. This is the last moment the two are fully open to each other. I really wish we spent a bit more time with the two before we got to the Fireflies, like in the game, but I am glad the two were able to show their appreciation of each other. Ellie thanking Joel for protecting her, and Joel thanking Ellie for helping him grieve. But yes, here we are at the hospital. Joel and Ellie finally made it. Their journey is at its end. And here is where I must admit something to you all. I lied! Obviously, at the end of the last episode's review, I lied about everything ending well, but that one was obviously a joke. I've mentioned multiple times in these reviews that Joel was going through his hero's journey in this season, and now he should be reaching his atonement stage, and be rewarded with the elixir, funnily enough, being the vaccine. Well, there is one issue with calling Joel's journey a hero's journey. Joel is not a hero. He never was. Even before the outbreak, as we saw with him not stopping to help the family out, only caring about his own. And as we saw in the last episode, if you try to take away his family, you are going to awaken a monster. Joel is willing to do anything to protect his family. It only gets worse when you bring up his past trauma of losing his daughter into it. Which brings me back to the end of the first episode. The scene I was freaking out about earlier. The one I said blew my mind. In that moment, Joel is fueled by his trauma of losing his daughter and gets tunnel vision into rage and violence. And would you look at what happens in this episode? Joel is fueled by his trauma of losing his daughter and gets tunnel visioned into rage and violence. This is definitely cheating, but if I had to choose one scene to be my favorite out of this season, the last 20 minutes of this episode are hands down my favorite. To pick just one moment from this sequence to be my absolute favorite is impossible. This show perfectly adapts the ending of the game. I said that Left Behind was the most game-accurate episode, but the end of this episode might be even more so, and I am so unbelievably happy it is. Again, the ending of part 1 is one of my favorite endings in honestly all of fiction at this point. The questions it raises, both about Joel's actions and the lie he tells at the end, all make this ending one that has stuck in my mind for almost a decade now. I'm so glad this show decided to stay faithful to the game, and I'm so excited to finally be talking about why it is incredible. So let's get started. Firstly, we have to talk with Joel and Marlene. I do think this scene feels a bit rushed in the show, and I prefer how dragged out the twist was in the game, but as a trade-off, we both get to see Marlene be more emotional, even crying, and we get a better explanation on Ellie's cure pure. All thanks again to the incredible flashback at the start of this episode. Joel's reminder of Ellie is her knife, the one that Anna gave her. The knife probably also reminded Marlene of her again, and explains the tears she sheds. Again, I truly believe she did feel conflicted on killing Ellie, and I think this moment absolutely proves that. Better than the game did. I love the focus the knife gets in this adaptation, and that leads to this incredible moment. Then we finally get to the moment Joel decides to throw everything away to save Ellie. Again, I will be talking about if what he does here was right in the next section, but for now, I will gush about how absolutely freaking incredible this moment is. I have not been able to stop rewatching this moment over and over again since it first aired. It is perfect, and I genuinely mean that. This is everything I wanted for this scene, and more. And part of it all has to do with the incredible music. The same track played when Joel carries Ellie in the game. Obviously, huge props to the composer Gustavo, but also props to Craig Mazin for sticking to the game's music throughout this entire series. I truly believe that if the show didn't use the same music as the game, this adaptation would have failed. This song, The Last of Us Vengeance, perfectly encapsulates all of Joel's anger in this moment, and perfectly shows Joel's tunnel vision and dissociation due to his PTSD of losing Sarah. You can barely hear the screams and gunshots. Everything is being overpowered by this music. And then, as the song slowly turns into sadness, we pull away from Joel and focus on the reality of what he has done, the people he has murdered on his way to save Ellie, all ending with one final march, where the music is stripped down to a few strings as Joel marches to the operating room, passing by pictures of animals on the wall, only reminding him more of Ellie. The music in this scene is perfect, but that's not the only reason why this scene is perfect. I said that this adaptation would fail without the music, but this adaptation would also fail if the performances were not at their best. And as I made it perfectly clear multiple times in these reviews already, everyone does an incredible job in the show, and that obviously includes Pedro Pascal. This is his best scene by far, and he perfectly shows off Joel's dissociation, all with just his face. You can just see his heart racing as he hides behind cover, and his focus in his eyes. His look when he uses Ellie's knife is just so unnerving. He doesn't even look alive, and doesn't hesitate to kill this man just because he stands in his way of saving Ellie. He even kills someone who is surrendering, not risking any chances. Maybe the music has something to do with this, but I can't help but see sadness in how Joel looks. Maybe he is reflecting on everything he has done, people he just killed, but that all goes away once he sees Ellie. I love how he doesn't even look at the doctor he shoots, laser focused on Ellie and making sure she is safe. He even tells the nurses to cover up her bleeding, and as he goes to pick up Ellie, her head rests in the same position Sarah's did when she died, another reminder to Joel of his loss. He even carries Ellie the same way he did with Sarah the day he lost her. One ominous zoom in on the doctor later, Joel goes to the elevator, and here we see him look down to Ellie. I can't help but feel at this moment that he is reflecting on Ellie and how she is going to react to everything he has done, taking away her chance to make her life mean something. But in the end, it's all to protect her. At least, that's what he thinks it is. And then we have Joel and Marlene's final confrontation, and Marlene's attempt to talk Joel out of stealing Ellie. I'll talk more on this moment in the next section, but for now, I will say that I love Meryl's performance here, and while the script is very close to the game, the changes it does add are greatly appreciated. Same goes with the scene of Joel driving away. No joke, I was verbally begging the show to cut to Joel driving away the same way it does in the game, and I'm so happy that it did. This is shot for shot the exact same scene as the game, just with Joel adding an additional explanation on why Ellie doesn't have her clothes or bag. Which, yeah, maybe it was the drug still making Ellie sleepy, but it's kind of funny she doesn't question that in the game. But yes, I love that the show stayed faithful to the game here, including the fake out cut to Joel driving, and ending it all with Joel's anger while he kills Marlene, making sure that is the last thing that sticks in our mind. This is where many might expect the story to end, but we still have a bit more of this episode left, as Joel and Ellie head to Jackson. Again, Joel is finally able to talk openly about Sarah to Ellie, talking about how they used to hike and how she would climb up big rocks, like Ellie does in episode 6. Okay, now I think I have all the references to past episodes. In this part of the game, you play as Ellie, a nice parallel to how you play as Sarah at the start. You start this game and end this game as Joel's daughter. This also forces the player to reflect on Joel's actions from Ellie's perspective, which leads us into the final scene of this amazing story. Ellie talks about Riley, the first person in her life she truly lost, one that she loved, then Tess, someone who she tried to look up to as a mother after losing her own, and then Sam, someone she saw as a little brother, and someone she tried to protect. and failed. Each of these deaths, each by the cordyceps, are what made her want to help the Fireflies make a cure. Each of these losses she blames herself for, and she is willing to do anything to make sure it doesn't happen again to the people she loves. Joel misinterprets what she means here and gives the wrong advice, telling her to just keep going, even when all hope is lost. Something she taught him. It's good advice, don't get me wrong, but it's clear this goes right through Ellie, and she doesn't care. All she cares about is Joel being honest with her that the Fireflies truly weren't able to make a cure, and that Joel didn't take away her chance at becoming the hero she wanted to be. Of course, Joel lies to her here, not in some big way, just with a simple,
I swear.
and as the music swells, and as we see Ellie reflect on what Joel just said, maybe believing him, maybe not, all we get is a simple response.
Okay.
And that is how The Last of Us ends. Again, almost identical to how it ends in the game. This show perfectly finishes off this incredible season. I don't think everything I said here can do my love for this finale justice. This adaptation knows exactly when to mimic the game and when to stray away, and this final episode does both beautifully. And I am so grateful it was done so incredibly well. But like I said before, we still have one more question left to answer. And honestly, after seeing so many takes on this ending online, both from people who have played the game and newcomers, I feel I need to give my own take on this debate, and hopefully give a new outlook to people, as I do believe many people don't realize the true core of this question. That question being, was Joel right?
Vegeta, what you do?
Nothing.
Vegeta, what did you do?
Nothing!
What did you do?
I f***ed your mom!
I don't have a mom!
Neither do I.
I've been delaying so long recording this. Like, oh my god. I've just been lazy, and also this argument is just a lot. But we're gonna do it. I'm gonna do it now. I don't know how long this is gonna be. If it's longer than my actual episode review, I don't know whether to be happy in myself or disappointed. Anything could happen. There are multiple sides to this argument. Some people spend too much time focusing on, some not enough people focus on, and some I will have to ignore in order to not spoil the events in the upcoming seasons. First off, let's address one quick point that I find to be irrelevant in this argument. If the cure would have even worked in the first place, would the Fireflies have been able to create a vaccine, and would it have worked? Again, like I said, the show does show us why Ellie is immune, and does its best to put a definitive end to this debate, and say that the vaccine would have worked. And from how the showrunners talk about it in the podcast, it is their intention to say that it would have worked as well. Now, is that scientifically realistic? I don't know. But in a show where Joel can find gasoline in cars probably decades old, I don't think realism should be a focus 100% of the time. Plus, and this is my main point I want to stress, Joel's decision to save Ellie had nothing to do with whether the cure would or would not have worked. In his mind, the only thing that mattered was not losing another daughter. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Joel does think a vaccine would have been made if the surgery went through, but that wasn't the reason why he saved Ellie. And okay, let's just say for the sake of the argument that no, the Fireflies would not have been able to make a cure, and that they were going to kill Ellie for no reason. That means Joel's decision is 100% justified from both an emotional and moral level. Doesn't that just take away all the weight in Joel's decision at the end? To me, this argument stems from people trying to justify Joel's actions any way they can, and completely ignore the questions this ending brings up. If you want to critique the writing and how it sets up this moral question, that's fine. But using it to justify your point ignores what the message even is. It's easy for people to focus on the logistics and micro details of media instead of the moral and emotional messages and themes. Last Jedi! And I think this argument does devolve into that quite often, although there is one point from this side that I do want to mention quickly. Again, this does not have any bearing on Joel's decision, but it is an interesting point to think about. Would the Fireflies have actually given out the vaccine to the people that need it? This is an argument I am much more interested in having than if the vaccine would have worked. I am definitely on the fence about this one. I think I will have a much fuller picture when I play part 2, but for now, let's focus on just this season. This show has made it very obvious, especially with the pipe bombs and Left Behind, that the Fireflies are not good people. To be fair, There is no such thing as truly good in The Last of Us, but the show has set a precedent, even episode 5 with Kathleen's group, that these terrorist groups can be just as bad as the leaders they are overtaking, even if Fedra does deserve to be taken down. Both factions, however, are obsessed with control and power, and it isn't a stretch to say that it's possible the Fireflies would have used this cure as a leverage to recruit more soldiers and keep it away from the people that need it. The fact that they never made it clear to Joel or Ellie that she would die until the very end shows that they can be manipulative. And honestly, while the vaccine would definitely have saved numerous lives, humanity as a whole would still be able to survive the apocalypse and continue to thrive. I mean, they have for this long. You've seen Jackson. Humanity is tough, and the only thing that would truly cause it to end is itself. Hell, there are probably a lot of people who would refuse the vaccine. You've seen in real life the amount of people who refuse to take a vaccine from the government. Imagine if they were asked to take one from terrorists. Now, there are probably a lot of counter-arguments for this point, and I will admit that I won't have a full picture of the Fireflies' motives until I play part 2. This is why I encourage you to drop a comment below on your thoughts on this argument. Not just for this point, but everything in general. I'm very curious to see where people stand and hear other viewpoints I haven't considered. I think the show in particular has done a great job at showing how both Fedra and the Fireflies are heavily flawed. But now it's time we get to the real meat of this discussion. The emotional and moral core of Joel's decision. Joel's entire character arc is to justify this action emotionally. From him losing Sarah to him calling Ellie baby girl, all of it comes together in this final decision. All of it was done so the audience can understand why Joel decides to save Ellie. While yes, he does resort to violence and hatred, it all stems from his fatherly love of Ellie. And just like a lot of parental figures do in real life, sometimes it is best to not tell your child the truth in order to protect them. And that is exactly what Joel does with Ellie, lying about what happened. Joel is a protector, saving who he can save, and fighting to spend every minute he can with Ellie. And God help any motherfuckers who stand in his way. It's everything the show represents. And hopefully we all emotionally can understand why Joel made his decision here. Anyone with any sense of empathy should. If you have ever loved someone, which I guarantee every single one of you watching this has, and you were put in this situation, you would do what Joel does. Maybe not go on a full killing spree, but you would fight, especially if you are a parent and this is your child. It's easy for us to say no, we wouldn't, looking at the situation on the outside. And having this story now in a show format helps this a lot. But when emotions are high in the moment, like with Joel, I guarantee most people would do the same thing. Actually, I think the show might make Joel's actions even more sympathetic, not just by making his trauma more explicit, but as I described in my episode review, showing Joel's dissociation perfectly. Compare the moment Joel kills the surgeon to the moment Joel tries to reason with the old man in episode 5. He clearly doesn't want to kill the sniper and wanted to reason, even more so considering he knows that the man wouldn't be able to harm him or Ellie, but the man decides to attack still, knowing that it will end his life. When Joel kills the surgeon, he doesn't hesitate. It doesn't even look at the man, only tunnel visioned on Ellie. That's all that matters at that moment. He sees this man as an obstacle in his way of protecting her. Comparing these two scenes perfectly shows the state of mind Joel is in here. So we understand Joel emotionally, but is that the right decision morally? This entire debate is one big trolley problem. How many people would you sacrifice in order to save someone you love? Joel made the explicit decision to choose Ellie over everything, even his life by risking it all to fight the Fireflies. Even if we ignore the cure itself and how many lives that could potentially save, Joel kills tons of people directly by hand to get to Ellie, including one innocent surgeon, thinking he was doing the right thing, just like Joel. And like it or not, while yes, Joel does love Ellie and is protecting her, Joel kills these people in hatred, shown to us in the scene of him shooting Marlene, someone he didn't need to kill. The show placing the scene right after Joel drives away hammers this point and more. We see the love he has for Ellie, but end this moment with his hatred. He hates the Fireflies for what they are doing with Ellie, and he makes the selfish decision to save her. I think at the end of the day, while we can understand Joel emotionally and why he makes this decision, his actions were not right. This is definitely where I think there is a lot of discussion to be had, and I look forward to seeing what others have to say about this subject. I just want to make it perfectly clear here that no matter what anyone says, Joel is not a hero or a villain. Hell, I wouldn't even consider him an anti-hero. If The Last of Us has taught us anything, there are no true heroes or villains in this world, except for David. Not everything is black and white, and to label these characters with those titles diminishes what the story is trying to say. This might seem obvious to you, But with how some people are complaining about how the show tries to portray Joel as a quote-unquote villain in these scenes, it seems like there are some people who don't fully understand what this show is actually about. There are a lot of areas of this debate to argue about, and in truth, this entire situation is just morally gray. There is no other way to put it. While I think Joel's actions are wrong, you might think they're right, and none of our answers are inherently wrong. There is one aspect of this discussion, though, that I feel most people ignore. One area where I can definitively say that what Joel did was 100% wrong, but also where the Fireflies were 100% wrong as well. You might be ahead of me on this one. Hell, the show does a damn good job at making this point obvious. This debate usually boils down to Joel, the Fireflies, maybe Marlene, but I rarely see debate on the center of this argument and what it really is all about. Ellie, the life that is on the line here. Both Marlene and Joel take away Ellie's agency in this moment. Ellie deserves a choice at this moment. And yes, she definitely would have chosen to sacrifice her life, but that is still a decision she needs to make, not anyone else. And while I understand why Joel lies to her, it just hammers that point in more, that he only cares about being with her and not what she wants. Again, I don't blame him. He already lost one daughter, and he refuses to lose another. But again, this is not his decision to make. This entire season has been about her maturing and seeing what the world truly is. And in this episode, we see that she has truly become an adult. She can and should have made the decision on if she should sacrifice her life. This is her way of getting revenge on the infection that took away everyone she loved and could potentially take Joel as well. Notice how when she talks to Joel about finishing their journey, she says, "After all I've been through." You could see this all as being selfish and Ellie wanting herself to be a hero, but I think there is enough evidence, at least in this part of the story, to believe that Ellie was trying to protect the people in her life. That is the main point I want to come across in this section. I've made it perfectly clear many times in these reviews that Ellie is the main character of The Last of Us, and she should be the focus of this debate more. Her agency is, in my opinion, the center of this argument, and is what both the Fireflies and Joel choose to ignore when they made their decision. My opinion on Joel's decision constantly changes, but in the end, I believe that Joel's heart was in the right place, but that his actions were unjustified. It's just a shame everything resorted to violence in the end, when things could have easily turned out well if the Fireflies didn't lie to both Ellie and Joel. There really isn't a right side to this argument, and in many ways, this situation parallels the one Henry described to Joel in episode 5. In that, instead of the Fireflies screwing over Henry, it's Fedra. But in both, however, Joel and Henry must sacrifice a life, or lives in Joel's case, to protect the ones they loved. The conversation Kathleen has with Henry parallels the one Joel has with Marlene in the finale. The difference here is Ellie, and how she should have been the one to decide what happens, and how Joel lies to her about the truth, unlike Henry to Sam. And this is where I will leave the argument for now. I honestly could talk even more about this and go back and forth on if Joel is right or wrong, and I look forward to returning to this once part 2 is adapted, but this is where I will stop. Again, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, and there are no true heroes or villains in The Last of Us, because everyone is human, and that is why I love this franchise so much, and why I am so excited to see how the show adapts part 2. That story is massive compared to part 1, and it's going to be even more difficult to adapt. But I have faith in Craig Mason and Neil Druckmann. They already more than proved themselves with this incredible first season. I also look forward to replaying part 1 once it releases on PC, and it probably has been released by the time this is uploaded. And I also look forward to playing part 2, hopefully later this year, and hopefully I'll be able to stream both. For now, this is where our journey through The Last of Us ends. Before I say goodbye, there is just one more thing I would like to do.
So now that I've reviewed every single episode of The Last of Us, I think it's only fair we end this off with the ranking of every episode, going from least best to best. And I want to reiterate, there are no bad episodes of The Last of Us. You saw this coming. 9th place, episode 6, Kin. Again, I don't think this is a bad episode, but it is definitely my least favorite. In fact, I actually cut out a lot more of my criticisms of this episode in my review. I was just thinking the video was going on too long. Ironic, I know. I also felt like I was just being too mean to it. And I've been coming back to this episode and seeing a lot of good it has, so it is definitely a good episode. 8th place, episode 2, Infected. I hate putting this so low, as I do love the Infected fight and the final scene of Tess. But just compared to the other episodes, I feel like they had more than this one. 7th place is episode 4, Please Hold to My Hand. Pun Book. Sixth place is episode 8, When We Are in Need. I'm gonna be honest, part of the reason why this is kind of lower is just because of David, and I really don't like watching him being creepy. But this is definitely a great episode. Fifth is gonna be episode 7, Left Behind. The rest of these episodes on this were the hardest to rank for me. This episode in particular, I have a lot of personal attachment to, for obvious reasons. Fourth place is gonna be episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. Oh my god! One of the best pilots for a series in general. I don't think that's a hot take. Yes, it is long, but it's still really, really good. Number 3 is gonna be, fittingly enough, episode 3, Long Time. This might be my hottest take here, not putting it at number 1. I was really close to. But these last 2 episodes are just, as a fan of the game, seeing them be adapted so perfectly was great. But also having this new story as well, one that is better than the original, definitively, was so great. Second place, with episode 5, Endure and Survive. Honestly, this episode has just everything in this show that I love. Great additional content, while also adapting scenes from the game, changing them up just a tid, and making them even better and more emotionally impactful. But the one episode that does both of that the most, adds in so much great new content, while also adapting the game faithfully to a point, almost word for word, almost shot for shot the same, is, well, you know it, I already said it. The last episode, episode 9, Look for the Light. It's the reason why this video took so long to make, because I had to edit this and write it, and I have so much to say on it. And also, I'm lazy, but, you know, I just like to think this episode was just that good. But yeah, that's the end of The Last of Us. Part 1, at least. If you want a ranking, if you want me to put a number, 10 out of 10, obviously. But, that's it. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. There's been so many technical issues and everything with me. I'm just starting on YouTube. I'm sorry if everything looks like shit, if everything sounds like shit, but hopefully I can improve. And I am so happy this show exists and got me to make videos. And I am so excited for a couple of videos I have up in the future. But for now, I think we're gonna take a little break from this franchise. This was a lot to do. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you when I see you. Oh, I went to Goodwill. We were gonna buy clothes, and I just see they had a golf club section. I had to get one. I don't know why I did. I just wanted one.